Hello, my name is Kedar and you're watching rptv News. In 2017, rptv launched the first in a series of videos called Regent Parks, the past, the present, and the future. We also interviewed Regent Park residents to find out what life was like in the past. We asked them about what life is like for them in the present. And finally, we explored their hopes and visions for the future. 7 years have passed since the first episode, and much has changed, though some things still stayed the same. New buildings have risen, more people have moved in, and now phases 4 and 5 are already underway. At rptv, we're excited to revisit Regent Park's past, present, and future with a new series of interviews. Regent Park remains a vibrant place where many newcomers come to when they first arrive, and where others have put down roots and call home. The revitalization has brought many changes, attracting many residents who also see the benefits of this neighborhood. And now, with all this in mind, let's go meet some of our Regent Parkers.
Hello, my name is Dimitri Martinovic and you're watching rptv. Welcome back to another episode of the Regent Park Past, Present and Future. Today we will be speaking with Saquib Ahsan, a longtime resident of the Regent Park. Saqib's story is one that is inscribed with the spirit of the past, present and the future of Regent Park. In our interview, Saqib reveals that he feels lucky to have lived, worked and volunteered in Regent Park, and it is these encounters with volunteerism that helped shape Saqib's character both as a young person and as an adult. However, what stands out for him when he recalls the bygone days is the spirit of belonging and the sense that in this place, Regent Park, one could feel safe and supported by the community.
So my name is Saqib. I'm a longtime Regent Park resident, having grown up in the 90s and the early 2000s here. I recently finished my master's in urban planning. I'm one of the few lucky people who can say they've worked, lived, and volunteered in the community, which I'm quite proud of. And I recently also published a book. My family and we've been living in Canada for about a year up until this point, hoping to get into the social housing system. We were living in Oak Street at the time, and then when we finally did move into the community, this was about 1996 or 6 or 7, so about almost 30 years ago. I still vividly remember. So just for some context, our family, we didn't really have an understanding of the problems that existed in the inner city, particularly marginalized inner city spaces, like Regent Park and other places. We didn't know about the generational poverty. We didn't understand about the violence, and the other troubles that plagued this community. So when we arrived and we entered our house, we were ecstatic. We thought we hit the jackpot almost. And I vividly remember we were arguing and fighting over who would get which room. And it's a cherished memory of mine because I still feel that way about Regent Park. I try my best to, and I thank God every day that I'm housed and that I have a community here that supports me, and that I can contribute to, and that I'm a part of. And I feel this, and I still feel this way about Regent Park. Revitalization was a bit of a cold period for the community. There's a lot of activities that were missing from the community due to the construction and the displacement and the breaking down of structures that we used to use as gathering spaces. They were no longer around. And I was quite worried that I would never see that old spirit of Regent Park ever again. That old spirit of Regent Park where people would be outside playing badminton up until 11 p.m. or just being out and about in the community. I really miss those days. I think my most vivid memory of Regent Park would be, we used to have this thing called blockoramas or blockouts. and there used to be community events, and the whole community would be outside. And I think this was an interesting conversation that we had previously, and I want to pose this question, and I think it's a worthwhile debate, because back then you really got a chance to see how diverse the community was, and I'm wondering if the community is more diverse than it was previously. I think that's an interesting conversation that's deserving to be had.
Growing up in Regent Park has always had its challenges, and for Saqib, it was no different. But like so many of the inner city neighborhoods, there are often robust social service agencies in place to assist with employment, education, and healthcare. It was during this critical period in high school that Saqib was exposed to pathways to education, whose vision and mission are centered on providing opportunities for young people to complete their high school education.
So what motivated me to get involved in the community? A few things, actually. So when I was in high school, I wasn't particularly a bad kid, but I was choosing the wrong friends and was a little vulnerable to peer pressure, like many other kids in my neighborhood. And I was missing a lot of school, and I just wasn't doing well. And it was really my mentors at Pathways to Education that really helped me get on the right track and graduate high school, which was a bit of a journey for me. Following my graduation, I wanted to give back to this structure. So I started volunteering wherever I could. Young Street Mission, the CRC when it was still the CRC, now it's Fred Victor, and of course Pathways. I tried to be a mentor and a tutor myself. And so that motivated me at a community level. Outside of the community, when I started my undergraduate degree in political science at York University, my program, I think, did a good job of activating me. And I really firmly believed, and I still do, that a lot of structural changes happen at a grassroots level, and I think that that really influenced me and had a big impact on how I saw the world and what I was capable of. It really empowered me and brought me back to my roots.
Seeing the positive impact that social programs can have, Saqib began to seek out other agencies in the neighborhood where he could contribute by being a tutor and mentor to other young people. In other instances from his childhood, Saqib recalls the impact that murals had on him, painted by local artists depicting the concerns and aspirations of Regent Parkers. Discerning that social structures are intertwined becomes a defining influence of agency on the young Saqib.
So I just want to say that, okay, so I'm not here to disagree on the perception or agree on the general perception that the public holds of Regent Park. But I will say this, that Regent Park, there was always a community here. And I did have a childhood here, and I did have a community that fostered my childhood and development. And I think that because I have an inside-out perspective of Regent Park, having lived in the community for so long, I can say that now there are structural barriers in place and inequities that prevent people from often making the right decision. But it ultimately does fall on the person itself to make the right decision. A few things stand out to me in the community that really had an impact on me. The murals in the community, which many of which are no longer around, had really, at an early age, fostered my artistic development. There are two such murals that really stand out to me that are no longer here. They were broken down early in the revitalization, and I believe they're not preserved. The first one they're both in Southside, actually. And the first one was an open palm, revealing just an empty palm. And it was the words above it were, "This is all you have." And the wall next over, it was a closed fist, symbolizing power, with the words, "Your life." I think that really gave me a sense of agency back, and really led me to believe that I had control over my path in life. Another mural that stood out to me was just nearby it, actually, down River Street. It was a mural of a young man who was at the crossroads, and there were there was a decision that he had to make between two choices. The first choice was it was a hallway, and the first choice was like gang activity, drugs, guns, and violence. But the second choice was career, opportunity, education, and community. And that led me to believe that even though my community has these negative aspects to it, there was still space and room to make the right decision and to move forward in life. So I think that's how I handle the general public perception of Regent Park. Always understanding that, like, it is what you make of it, and you can always be that agent of change in the community.
Voyagers, Saquib Ahsan's science fiction novel, modeled in part on Regent Park, takes place 1,000 years after an apocalyptic event and traces the evolution and devolution of social structures in a new world that has been devastated by an alien plant form. In this new place, Acadia, stand-in for Regent, waves of migrants occupy and settle the region. Power struggles ensue between different groups over resources and the right to shape the course of the socio-political landscape. In a reading from his book Voyagers, Saqib makes an allusion to Regent Park. The Acadians mirror some of the dynamics of present-day social housing residents in Regent Park, victims of a social order imposed on them by more powerful forces.
So I'm going to be reading two excerpts from the book. They sort of give context to this community, this fictional community, which drew influence from Regent Park. Okay. It was clear from the way the ancients had planned the community, now known as Rockland, that only those responsible for building the structures were permitted to imagine its design. The roads were standardized and had once been separated from the sidewalks with impermeable steel grates. The parks were void of trees and assembled together with flowerless fields of colored concrete, while the living quarters were kept far away from the factories and foundries, and appeared to be segregated with some kind of class structure in mind. What that structure may have been, however, was long lost to time. It was as if each space had been built to serve its designated purpose and nothing more, or at least that's how it was before the old Acadians were forced to retreat into the city and settle. Like a scattered colony of ants in search of shelter, their ancestors had crawled into every ancient corner and crevice in an effort to evade the Westerian army. And much like a restless house cat, they made it their home without much thought or care for those sharing or inheriting the space. Grand libraries were made into granaries, great factories were replaced with ranches, open streams became open sewers, and apartments became indistinguishable from slaughterhouses and unsanitary hospitals. Even whole stadiums and arenas were infilled with unplanned houses and high-rises, until they transformed into well-fortified strongholds as the centuries marched on. There was also once enough space in the streets for trucks and other large vehicles, but now the roads unreliably narrowed and widened as a result of shifts in the reutilized land. Such nearsightedness not only permanently deformed and scarred the built space, but also resulted in the eventual stagnation of the development. It was uncertain for several centuries just how much time had actually passed since the fall of old Acadia, and when her descendants emerged from their walled sanctuaries after the lost years. Yet it was here, behind the confines of a makeshift wall made of melted engines, vehicles, and instruments, where the largest old Acadian refugee and military settlement persisted. Encircled by an outer walled crescent of repurposed steel and concrete, and a rocky cliffside which marked the end of the highland to the east, was now the interior of Rockland, a bustling community within a community, which together in its own right was a well-established empire within the city of Queens. This community called Rockland, the geography of, so it's surrounded, so there's two parts to the community, in the same way there are two parts to Regent Park. Instead of a north side and a south side, however, there's an interior and an outer. And the geography of the land, the space itself, so if you notice, to the east, there's a rocky cliffside, very similar to how we have the Don Valley nearby. And there are several bridges connecting into the community as well. This community, since its inception, this is about 1,000. If you want to imagine, this would be Regent Park after 1,000 years of military occupation surrounding the community. What would that look like? That's how I try to envision the community. How would people change? How would structures change? How would buildings come and go and the streets narrow and widen? How would people make use of the space and reutilize it and reanimate it? These are some of the things that I thought of when I thought of this community called Rockland. And in particular, the social housing aspect of it, I want to focus on. The idea that only those who were building the space were able to imagine its design. Maybe that may not be as much true as it is now than it was before. But I believe that to be true for constructs like Regent Park. When Regent Park was initially developed, I firmly believe there are a lot of good intentions in mind. I don't believe that it was done to intentionally marginalize and encapsulate people and perpetuate systems of inequity and generational poverty. However, this is what ended up happening, and for one reason or another, people felt entrapped in these communities. I know I certainly did. The idea that only those who were building this space were able to imagine its design. So only those who were building this space were able to imagine its design. That is an allusion to government authority and government decision making, and the idea that marginalized people, they're removed from that core of the citizenry, the population that actually goes on and about making those decisions, actively making those decisions that affect people's lives directly, while the people themselves are removed from such an important task.
In his last thoughts on the revitalization, Saqib emphasizes that he was someone who wholeheartedly embraced revitalization, citing that the neighborhood was in a state of disrepair and revitalization was necessary. When voicing his concerns for the present and the future of Regent, Saqib raises the issue of class. Just because we ignore the concept of class doesn't really make it go away. People, he goes on to say, living in social housing inevitably want to alleviate their poverty and escape the cycle of poverty. But if we keep the same social structures in place that perpetuate intergenerational poverty, what have we actually accomplished? We may have only concealed poverty, as poverty now manifests itself differently. It is much less obvious. Things look great from the front, but they're masked under the guise of revitalization.
So I'm someone who invited revitalization. I think that the community was in a state of major disrepair, and revitalization was necessary. What revitalization would look like, how it stands today, it isn't necessarily what I had in mind. I think that, so I have a lot of hopes for the community. I do have my concerns as well. A concern of mine is inclusivity, economic opportunity, and just people's sense of agencies in the community. The community has changed a lot. It's become much more dense. There's much more people in the community now. And I think class is something that we tend to shy away from speaking of. And it's sort of not necessarily become a dirty word, but I think that just because we ignore the concept of class, it doesn't necessarily make it go away. Opportunity is something that, living in social housing, there's a tendency for people to want to alleviate their poverty and eventually escape that cycle of poverty. But if we keep the same structures in place, we rebuilt the community, but if we keep the same social structures in place that perpetuate generational poverty, what have we actually accomplished is my question. In many respects, I think that what we've accomplished is concealing poverty in the inner city. It's just poverty in itself just manifests itself differently now. It's much less obvious. Things look great from the front, but they're masked under the guise of this revitalization. And there's a lot of displacement that happened in Regent Park. The old spirit, maybe it's me. A part of me has to let go of the old spirit, but I was very worried that I'll never see it again. But I'm very happy that there are new agencies that have formed, new grassroots groups that have formed. We still have Sunday in the Park. We still have Summer Jam. These things they've returned in the community. I would just like to see more participation. That's a concern of mine. I would like to see the gap between social housing and market residents be bridged a little bit better. And I would just like to see more economic opportunities in being invested into the community. I think revitalization was necessary. I think that the people who invested their time and effort into it, I think they're doing a good job. I don't think revitalization has been a complete disaster. I would just like to see more accessibility as well, because it's very easy for people who have intersecting identities to be further marginalized very quickly as time progresses. They can be forgotten very easily. For example, people who have disabilities and are racialized. When you're dealing with these overlapping structures of inequity, it's very easy to be isolated within the inner city, and I would just like to see more people be involved in the decision-making in the decision-making core of the community.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and visit us on all our social media platforms. Please visit our website for more information.